Hello and welcome to Conversations in Horror. I am your host, Kevin L. Powers. I am also the co-festival director and program director of Something Wicked Film Festival and Events, and welcome to my podcast. Now, if you've never heard the show before, or if you are back by popular demand, our show is designed to give a conversation in regards to a cult classic or a classic horror film. And today we are going to be doing the movie It Follows, which is a cult classic, and I guess we could also say it was financially successful, so it'd be a classic horror film as well.
Very much so.
Yeah, but today my special guest, because I have multiple today, is Philip Wray and Sarah Panozzo. They've been here on the show before, and they will have some great insights on this film, but I'm going to let them explain to you exactly who they are and what they do. Philip, take it away. Tell everybody a little bit about who you are and what you do.
Hi, my name is Philip Wray. I am a very avid moviegoer. I watch movies all the time, and a little background with It Follows is I watched for the first time last night, so this is my first time actually getting so my thoughts on the movie is very recent in comparison to probably you guys.
So yeah, that'll be interesting to see how you decipher the film.
Panozzo?
I am Sarah. I am a film aficionado. I watch way too much television and film in general, to the point that we were listening to movie soundtracks and I could pick out each individual film. So I'm sorry, but I am not sorry at all.
Okay, so Philip, because you mentioned this already, I need to, and you just saw the movie for the first time, I have to ask you first, what were your impressions of It Follows?
It Follows is, I've heard a lot of things about it before watching it. Of everyone's like, oh, it's amazing, it's great, it's a new horror classic and stuff. So walking into the movie, I had a lot of high expectations, and for the most part, it honestly did meet them. Watching it for the first time, I didn't realize until looking at the backstory about it that it originally premiered at a festival. It was originally not meant really for a big theatrical release, but because how successful it went from a limited release to having an extended release out in theaters. And definitely, so when I first watched it, there is a little bit of, it's a mixture of amateurish but not amateurish that it took me a bit to get used to, but once I settled in, I very much enjoyed. Again, the concept of It Follows is, I was talking to my wife about it last night, it is the great old, I'm not sure if either one of you guys did it or the viewers had it in their school and stuff, but it basically takes the age-old question of if you could earn $1 million but get chased around by a snail that if it touches you, it will kill you, would you take that money? They basically just took that concept and made it a movie, which it's cool. I mean, again, it's a thing that it's a unique idea, and I think the movie does a really good job with the theme of it. And there's also other hidden meanings. I've known the most common people have talked about with it is a metaphor, a little bit of HIV/AIDS, because the way that it. So to go a little bit premise of the movie, people who don't know, it's about this girl who ends up finding out that she has been given this entity is following her now after she had sex with a guy, and basically she has to either pass it along or she has to be constantly running from this thing that's slowly walking toward her, and if it gets her, it will kill her. So but she can transmit it through sex and it will go away from her, and this thing will disguise itself as anything getting toward her, and she's the only one that can see it.
Yeah, it's a sexually transmitted demon was the big joke.
Yeah, that's
when it first came out. Yeah,
it's a STD's the demon. But yeah, I overall I greatly enjoyed it. I thought it was a fun movie. And a very unique premise. And again, one interesting thing is that they are making a sequel called They Follows that will come out probably, I think right now slated maybe this year or next year.
I heard late fall. early winter.
Don't do it. But the director hasn't really done much since It Follows. So
Yes.
he may be a little desperate for some money. Hopefully not. Hopefully he's actually doing the movie for a reason, because I kind of don't really need a sequel to this.
Yeah, it kind of ended perfectly in an open-ended way. Because I did see his Under the Silver Lake, which was ultimately is crazy, and was very well shot. Like, he definitely has a style that he shoots in.
Okay. Because I was wondering about whether or not I need to go see that one or not, because I saw it and I haven't seen that one but I'll have to put that on my list.
It's a weird, like, comedy, if it's the one I'm thinking of, because that's one with Andrew Garfield, right? Yes, it is.
Yes.
So it's a weird, like, one, I love A24, and that's who it was made through. So it's a weird murder mystery that's also like a quirky comedy. It gets really bizarre, like super bizarre, like more bizarre than this movie.
Okay.
So it's very interesting. It's very fun, and Andrew Garfield is just phenomenal. So him in this role, it was just seeing him as Spider-Man and then seeing him as this. It's like, this is why he's nominated for Oscars and other movies. Like, I've seen him in so many other things. Like, this is him actually acting. So it's a weird movie, but it's very impressive.
Okay, well, hopefully the director will come up with another crazy version of this in the sequel they follow. But that being said, I kind of saw this movie because of you when it came out. Because I was like, it sounds kind of boring. I don't know. It looks kind of slow. I like slow horror movies, but
yeah,
this looked really slow, and I hadn't gotten into the A24 thing like you probably were at the time. I just kind of saw random films here and there from A24.
Actually, I think this was like my first A24 movie that I ever saw.
And then I put, when it came out on not streaming, DVD is when I picked it up. I didn't see it at the theater. I just kind of skipped over it. And I saw it. I wasn't surprisingly impressed. I thought it was okay. Mostly because I had seen the STD as a horror foil in a lot of other movies, and so that one didn't really catch my eye. It wasn't until I read the Devil's Advocate book on the film that I got a clear vision of the movie itself. That explained a lot to me that I did not see when I originally saw the movie. Which, if for all the listeners out there, if you haven't read Devil's Advocate, it's a series of books who actually critique and analyze cult and classic horror films and thrillers. They don't just do horror films; they do a lot of thrillers as well, because they've done some of Hitchcock's films. They are the writers of those books, who are all different, are people who do nothing but critique and analyze these type of films, and they do an amazing job at analyzing It Follows, enough so that it made me want to go back and rewatch it, because I had missed so much shit that I didn't realize I missed. I was like, oh crap, really? Oh damn. Okay, I didn't see that the first time I saw this. Let me go back and rewatch this movie. So when I rewatched the movie, I'm like seeing the way that the director, who I don't know his name, and what's his name?
David Robert Mitchell.
David Robert Mitchell did an amazing job with setting up the premise of this film. He uses these slow pan shots that are just so not only mood, but also the atmosphere of the locations that these characters find them in. And when they are trapped by the entity, you feel how claustrophobic they are. And it is visually stunning. He uses water. A lot of water is in this film. As a thematic and visual metaphor, that it opens with the woman who is going to the beach, who goes to more or less allow herself to be killed because she has no more hope. Then of course the main character, you see her swimming all the time. It's one of the things that she does all the time. And when I rewatched the movie, I'm like, holy shit. This movie is a visually stunning movie. How did I miss this the first time I watched it? And
well,
that,
it's so funny you bring that up because we had just talked about Halloween and we talked about The Thing and Carpenter and his big wide shots. And rewatching this again, I was like, it's shot the same space. They shoot with the wide open space so you can feel something watching. There is something out there.
yes.
And he actually references Carpenter and Romero as influences on the compositions and the visual aesthetic for the film. Which, like, we wouldn't have been able to put 2 and 2 together like that if we didn't just watch those movies.
Yeah.
One thing that's nice about the wide shots too is once you know what's going on, you as an audience member are constantly looking in the background about if you can see it. Like at the beginning, it kind of sets it up so the shots are kind of just there. It could be seen as a little bit boring. It was a little bit boring originally when I first saw it, but once it has been following, once it starts following stuff, I start as an audience member looking in the background and seeing like the moments where you just see it in the background looming. It builds up the tension a lot more because you're like, okay, where is it? Where is it?
Yeah, it's like what the I think one of my favorite ones is, and I didn't realize it until this time that I watched it, but they've got the schoolyard shot where there's like the old woman in white walking and she just walks through the middle of a conversation and the people don't react at all because there's nobody there.
Now, this being said, I'm getting onto the whole the cinematography of the film first, because that was what really impressed me the second time I saw it, because I didn't really and to be honest with you, I can't remember my mood when I saw this. I will say that when I watch a film at the theater, I am more engrossed in these films than I am if I'm sitting at home. I could be distracted. I hate being distracted by movies, which is why I like to go see movies at the theater. And this is my plug for going to the movies. You always will experience a movies better in a bigger atmosphere, even if the theater is empty. You are giving that film 100% of your attention, unless you're on your cell phone, which I hope you're not. Than you are if you're at home watching it at your on your little TVs with your little bitty sound bars and maybe the kids playing in the background and you're distracted by a million things. I could have been distracted by a million things when I saw this originally, but when I saw it the second time, I was definitely not, because I was specifically watching and listening for some of the stuff that I had read in the book, which I did see. That means that author was really damn good at analyzing the film, and it allowed me to enjoy the film even more than I did the first time. So,
yeah, go ahead.
One of my favorite shots, putting a bow on the cinematography, is the wheelchair shot.
Yes, it's genius how they rig that up.
Because like the whole time you're just like, because it does the good job of the opposite of, now it's not showing you the thing, the thing following it. It's just showing them, and you're just like, where is it in space? Is it right next to them? Is it behind them? Is it way far off? That was probably my favorite shot of the movie.
Yeah, but that and the one inside the school where it's the constantly rotational shot where you can see anything happening and it's getting closer, and then they're in the office and it's even closer. But no, I mean, the cinematography in this is just genius with what he does with all of these just like weird moments. And then he, like we said, he leaves a lot of space. So like when they shoot the big guy coming down the hallway, like you've got this giant open door that just feels like normally a large amount of space for a door, and then all of a sudden he fills it. But yeah, he just does some really interesting stuff, swapping between the perspective of it following somebody and then of you seeing their reaction, like the opening, the rotational shot, where you can just see the girl looking directly in the camera and she knows what she is seeing and terrified of, but we don't know what is going on.
Yeah, well, he also does that for the audience in certain aspects of the film too, where the audience can see the entity that's following her, but she doesn't realize it's the entity, which I also thought was very creative, because it's not a shock scare. It's an actual suspenseful moment, because you're wondering, Is she gonna realize it's really right behind her? When is she going to? Is it gonna get her before, creating that? It's a different way of creating suspense, because in your standard slasher or shock scare film, it's kind of like, or the fake scare, they kind of throw these random things at the audience trying to spook the audience. But this is slow and methodical, and that's one of the things I really enjoyed about the film.
Yeah, it's a very great slow burn, and it's so suspenseful, but there are like the 2 jump scares that get me every time because you're not expecting it, and it's nothing big. Like she's in the bathroom and a ball hits the bathroom window, or she's checking out a closet and all of a sudden somebody touched a wall on the other side and a hole collapses through it. Like they're really smart jump scares that don't ultimately have anything behind them.
And then like one of the big jump scares that like got me was when the moment where it's like she's in her room and the sister is knocking on the door saying, "Hey, let me in." And they're like, "Okay, let him in." And then they open the door and you see it's a friend. And then the actual entity slips in. The very tall guy slips in after that. Like that was a holy shit moment. The movie does a really good job talking what you guys were saying about the fake scares, is that it puts the audience on edge anytime a new character enters the scene, because you're looking, I know, like for me, I was looking, okay, how fast are they walking? Are they walking slow? Because that's your hint to know as an audience member if this is the thing or if it's just a normal character. But that's a great thing it does to the audience, is tricks them. It's like makes you question any person that comes on screen that you don't recognize.
Yep. So I do want to bring up something that before I completely get out of the cinematography, because I had to make sure that I got the right film because it reminded me so much of Alfonso Cuarón's Roma. I don't know if you saw that, the black and white film that he did, in which it was done by all the pan shots, the wide pan shots, the entire film, but the way he used the camera made the entire shot feel like it was full, even though it was empty, because of the way he used space. And the director for this film does the exact same thing, because it's one of those things that just it brings attention to itself, even though it's not really bringing attention to itself, because you want to see everything that's in the frame, but you also don't know when the entity is going to show up in that frame. So it's a little bit off-putting. I got the same impression when I watched Roma, and that the way these two were shot were very, very same, or I got the same feelings from them, so to speak. Even though Roma doesn't ever do anything other than the wide pan shots the entire movie, and this one does a lot more.
Yeah, like we keep saying, like there's those wide empty shots and they leave spaces that are wanting to be filled by something. So like you got the doorway in the bedroom, and then when they get to the lake house in Michigan, where there's a hole in the door and you're just waiting and waiting, and you're like, I know something's going to fill that space. But yeah, they do a lot of that. Like we said, the cinematography is very impressive, especially for a guy who's only done a handful of films. And I mean, the ultimate design of where he got some of these shots, he was influenced by a photographer named Gregory Crewdson. And looking at his artwork and his photography, some of the shots of the film look exactly like this man's photography when they do like the still shots of the buildings. And actually where they got the character or where it's all dressed in white with the blackened eyes. A lot of that comes from his photography, and it's very going with the whole timelessness of the movie. You can't tell exactly when this takes place, and the guy's photography is very similar. So looking at it, there's something wrong with these photos that this guy took. It's very haunting, and it leaves that open space where you're like, there's something there. So it was very interesting to look at the photography versus how they shot the movie, because it is very similar, like freakily similar. I almost feel like they're the exact same thing sometimes.
All right. So now this is a odd question I have, mostly because I'm curious. How effective do you think the entity as a monster itself was in the film and in for horror audiences in general? Because obviously the movie is effective enough so that they're doing the sequel now. but is it an effective monster per se?
I would say yes, because it does, and this is the only thing that worries me about a sequel, because they've already talked about they're going to commit the cardinal sin of all horror movies. They're going to talk about the origins in the sequel. I think what makes this movie so good is that they don't talk about what the origins of this thing is. They talk about its rules, but they don't talk about what it is. They don't say if it's a demon. They don't say if it's some alien. They don't explain what the thing is. You just know about it. And that is all the best horror icons. The less you know about it, the better. And that's what I think is very effective about the movie is you don't know what it is. You eventually get, it comes to a point early on where you wonder, it's like, is it really in their heads? Since no one can see it, it's only until halfway through the movie when you see the characters actually physically interact with it, with throwing a chair at it or shooting at it, do you recognize that, oh, it is something. It's not just in their mind, but the movie even does a good job halfway through to make you question, is it something just a psychosis or is it an actual entity?
Well, and they also, like you said, like changing the rules is a big no-no. That's one big thing. Like you don't want to go from like Friday the 13th 1 to all of a sudden rules in Friday the 13th 10. Because then you jump the shark, you lose the greatness that is this movie. And what's so interesting is that like we are explained the rules, like some generic rules. We don't know all of them about this entity. But everybody else in the film is not told about these things. So you think about these people who are just like dying and they don't know why. And then you look at what was the kid across the street who she slept with to get rid of it, who didn't believe in it. Like he died thinking that his mother was fucking him to death. And that is a terrifying thought of like, you get these regular people who are like, this is how I'm dying. What the hell is going on? And they don't get what happened because it's not explained to everybody. So there are so many people killed. And it was one of the big questions I had from the movie is, why is nobody talking about how many people are dying right now in the world? And they're all around the same age. But I get there's only one entity and they follow is supposed to be multiple entities. So
well, keep in mind that with this film, there's only, two people who actually die.
Yeah.
That we see.
Well, yeah, that we see because, the rules are if someone dies, then the entity goes back
to you.
To the previous person.
So like it's hinted at that the lead guy, the guy at the beginning that she dates, who's not who he says he is has done this to multiple women, which is why he's found out this whole
it's back to him.
System. It's constantly gone back. He's got the whole safe house where he's figured out the system. At one point, she goes to the boat with the 3 guys, and you don't know what happens, but it's possible it could have gone to 3 of those guys and then come back to her. Same with the neighbor, with the girls in the hospital, because it's like they don't see the entity for like days. So clearly there was enough stuff separating that it got other people to come back to these people to come back to her.
Yes, that makes for a very interesting conundrum in terms of story, and
I do like the vagueness with that because it doesn't lay things out of like, did she sleep with those guys on the boat? Did she they keep a lot of things vague, which I appreciate because again, the big problem with horror movies is when they over-explain everything. Yes. It's great for the audience member to put context clues to figure things out. Now, one critique I do have with the movie with the entity is they talk about how the entity will sometimes disguise itself as their loved ones, which we see with the guy. Mm-hmm. But we never see that with the main girl. And
we do. The guy at the end at the pool is actually her father. And they hint that throughout the film. There's the mirror on her wardrobe, and there's a small picture that they keep going back to, and it bugged me every time. But they hint about her dad being gone at some point, but you never truly hear that he's dead.
Oh.
But yeah, that's why she didn't want to say who it was who was attacking her, because she didn't want her sister to picture her father attacking them.
Yeah, I didn't see that the first time I saw the movie. I only saw that after I read about it.
Yeah, like you guys, the first time I watched this, I didn't catch a lot of it. It was the slow burn, and I was like, okay, I'm really into this. It's the STD thing, whatever. And then every time I've watched it, it has completely changed what I've thought of the film, because like the second time I watched it, it was more about sexual abuse. It can be anybody, even somebody you're related to, somebody you know. They could be lurking anywhere. And then when I rewatched it for this one, it finally hit me about how it's mortality. The thing is death. It is everywhere, and it will always catch up to you, no matter what you're doing.
Interesting point.
So there's the director actually said that he left it very open-ended so people could have their own opinions about it. He does throw a lot of comments about mortality in it. But he did say that he wasn't personally interested in where it comes from. To him, it's dream logic in the sense that they're in a nightmare, and when you're in a nightmare, there's no solving it, even if you try to solve it.
Yeah.
So he wanted it to be very just open-ended so it could reach more people, which it ultimately does.
Yeah. Agree. I think that's what makes the film so damn effective, which is all of our fears with the sequel is if they try and explain too much of it, you kind of ruin that aspect of it. That happens in a lot of movies that try to expand upon their original ideal. It's an unfortunate result of a successful film. It's rare when the filmmakers don't go back to do a sequel after it's been successful. There's more films out there that have sequels that had a less successful original film that then had a cult following. I'm talking about that The Thing prequel. And a ton of other movies out there. Like, why is there a sequel to this movie? The first one wasn't successful. It's just a cult movie. But this film right here, like I've said, I have a fear of a sequel, because it's such a good film, and it's one of those rare A24 films that, well, actually, this isn't rare, because most A24 films do not need the sequel. They are so damn good with just the original movie. They don't need sequels. But we can harp upon the sequels all we like. It's going to get one, and the original director is doing it, and so therefore it might actually be a decent follow-up. But for everyone out there, we all know that it follows. It rewards the audience for having multiple different viewings. The more you watch it, the deeper you get engrossed in this movie, which is ultimately what makes it really successful. You can keep watching it and learning new stuff every time you watch it.
Yeah, like it always got me about the clamshell phone, and I was so distracted by that phone every time. I didn't pay attention to what she was reading off of it. And what she was reading is actually really brilliant and goes back to the mortality thing. And the fact that she reads it throughout the entire film, it's like, I finally paid attention to that instead of the absurdity of the clamshell phone. But then at the same time, there's things that bother me, like when they set up the pool scene and you've got all these electronic things and there's a typewriter with a power plug on it. And I'm like, that's not how that works. Maybe in this universe.
I noticed that.
It bugged me so much, but I was like, it's got to be a universe thing. I mean, everything else is really bizarre. But that was the one thing to bring me out of the movie, and it made me irrationally angry.
Then that would place it directly in a time period, because they did have those typewriters. I think it's in the 90s. The typewriters in the 90s, they were trying to look like old style typewriters, but were ran by actual power.
But then explain the clamshell phone, Kevin.
You can't explain that, dude. I've never seen one before. That always is like we need this character because she's an odd character to have something weird as a phone. So we're going to give her this clamshell phone that really doesn't exist in the world that I know of. But we're going to have her have that anyways, because I've never seen one like that.
Clearly, the director's a fan of SpongeBob.
Yeah, I was going to say the shell phone joke.
Sorry, I've never watched SpongeBob. I would have never gotten that joke. Oh my God. Of course you two have.
I had younger siblings, man. I had to.
Oh my God. All right, so let's jump to what do we all think about some of the performances in the film? Because this is a film made up of pretty much a no-name cast, which is typical of low-budget horror films, but it's atypical that pretty much all the performances are spot on like they're actual teens / just leaving teens. I think the whole entire cast did an excellent job in this movie.
Yeah, they were all really phenomenal. I think the only one who was big before this was the guy who played Paul. He was in quite a few things as a younger child or a young teen. I think one of his big ones, it was one of those mental health movies, but he did a really good job in that one. And Micah Monroe now has like hit it super big.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Oh, he was in It's Kind of a Funny Story, and there was another one that he was in.
That's the name of the movie. It's Kind of a Funny Story.
Yeah, it was based off of a novel that I read as a teen. Yeah.
I thought you were going to tell me a funny story. I was like,
no, but he's been in a bunch of different stuff for a long time. So I recognized him and I didn't recognize anybody else. But now, like looking back, like Micah Monroe has hit it so big since this movie, and good for her because she did a phenomenal job as this being one of her first movies, I believe.
Yeah, I agree. I really enjoyed her in The Guest.
Yes.
The Guest was I thought another one of those indie horror films I really enjoyed. So, and I haven't seen much of what she's done other than The Guest and Watcher, which is another one of my favorite movies. She was phenomenal in that movie as well, and I can't wait to see what else she does. So,
yeah, The Guest was actually right before this. Apparently, like they came out the same year.
I saw The Guest late.
I did too.
People have to tell me how good it was, and I didn't have to go back and watch it. It Follows. You told me I knew about It Follows, but The Guest was a film I saw after everyone was telling me about. Kevin, you should go see The Guest. It's like it's kind of a generic title, but okay, I'll go see it. I'll see it.
So. Yeah, the other one she did really well in was Villains, which was starring opposite one of the Skarsgårds, and it was another like kitschy horror film.
Okay, I've not seen that one. Interesting.
But yeah, talking about the cast, it reminded me a little bit of Paranormal Activity in the sense of like it felt the actors felt real. They felt it did not feel like actors playing like different ages of like, oh, you've got this 30-year-old person trying to act like a 20-year-old. Like no, I think they all felt real. Like they very much felt real, and because they're no names. Again, because that's a very common low budget thing. It doesn't distract you in the movie. You buy everything in the movie,
and you never know who's going to get killed. Because to be honest with you, the first time I saw this, I was thinking that the entity would just start like a slasher movie, start killing random people. But the entity doesn't. It doesn't actually do anything to anyone unless you're impeding on it getting to its prey. I was like, oh yeah, that's kind of interesting there. Like,
yeah, I think they hurt each other more than the thing actually hurts other people.
That's part of the comedy I saw in the movie.
Yeah.
Second time I watched it, I was like, oh shit, I forgot she shot her. I was like, oh yeah, they kind of hurt themselves in this movie. I'm like, oh yeah, that's teenage acting right there.
Yeah, like you can definitely tell they're teenagers. You've got like they were the kids like when they're sitting outside on the front lawn. Like you saw people like that growing up. Like they were that age. They would just do that and hang out around town. And then you watch this and you're like, yeah, any idiot teenager would get in the car and leave all their friends with the entity and crash into a cornfield.
I know. When I rewatched that, I was like, oh shit, I forgot she did that. She left all of her friends behind. Wow. And then crashed the car. I was like, oh my God. Yeah.
I love too with the whole shooting, like the fact that she got shot and she didn't even like get mad at her. It's like, you shot me in the. He's like, listen, I know you're trying to kill the entity. You're fine. It's just a bullet wound. I'll be okay.
Yes. There is, and I think the humor doesn't really come in as much until like stuff like that. After she's trying to convince her friends that the entity exists. Some of them believe it, some of them don't, but they're all such good friends that they're supporting her the entire movie, whether they believe her or not. And I think that's part of the comedy right there is like, I don't know, I hate to say this, I don't know if I'm going to do some crazy shit for my friends if they tell me some shit I don't believe in. I'm sorry.
So I'm not going to call Kevin when I'm being hunted down by an entity from hell. that wants to kill me.
I will ask you, are you going north or south? If you say south, I'm going north. Okay. I'm just saying that now.
But what's honestly one thing about the story I actually greatly appreciated is they don't do the normal trope of, oh, something's following me, and everyone's goes, yeah, sure, we're going to like try to like we're not going to believe you. We're going to try to like lock you away, or we'll go do that. Like we'll go call the authorities, and we have the whole disbelief where they're trying to explain to the cops, like, oh, this is happening. And the cops are like, how much drugs have you done tonight? Like, I appreciate that in the movie. They did not do that. Again, the friends are like, I don't fully believe you, but we're going to follow along with you and stuff because, again, we're not going to leave you by yourself if you go through a traumatic thing. I greatly appreciate that because that is a common trope in a lot of movies about the disbelief everyone else has of like, oh, I don't believe you until the moment happens. Like, oh my gosh, I believe you now.
Yeah, they're dumb idiot teenagers. So why would the adults believe them? But in this movie, the adults believe them pretty quickly.
Well, there's a conscious effort for the filmmaker not to have a lot of adults in this movie. Besides there being the absentee parents all around,
yeah.
there's a constant ideal that the kids can't go to their parents for help. They have to rely on each other, which is what I appreciated with the movie. And that's what you're feeling when you don't see them go to cops and stuff like that, who won't believe them. They can only rely on themselves and their friends. And that's what I really liked about the characters in this film.
Yeah, the friends are very ride or die, even though they're like closer to her sister's friends than hers. They're all like, no, we all grew up together. We're gonna help you out no matter what, which is really great.
Even the one guy across the street who doesn't believe her, he still grew up with them in that neighborhood, and he still goes out of his way to help regardless of his belief. Well, his belief ultimately kills him because he screws his own mother. But hey, that's a little thing, you know? That was really disturbing too, by the way. I was like, that's some crazy shit there. You know,
because then it makes you wonder about the opening scene on the beach and like you saw what happened to him and how he died. Like, was she fighting back, and that's why she's the way she is? Was like, how does that happen? I'm also glad that visual. It really is, and I'm glad that they don't show a lot of the like grotesqueness that could come with this. They hint at it a lot. Like it's that the money shot of basically her being dead on the beach.
Yeah.
And then like you don't really get anything else like that. It's not super grotesque or gritty or anything like that. It's all very subtle in everything that they do with the film until you do get those big moments.
And I saw that as like almost an homage to the Ringu movies or The Ring, whichever one you prefer, in which you see the aftermath of what Samara or Sadako. I can't fucking say it.
I want to say Sudoku every time, and it's not.
So do I. When those characters, you see the aftermath after they've killed people, and it's really grotesque and really fucked up, but you don't see it actually happen. And that's how I felt when I watched this movie. It's more effective that way. You see the aftermath. You don't need to see how it actually done.
Yeah.
The aftermath is enough.
Yeah. It's better, again, like talking about origins is a big thing in horror movies. Honestly, leaving the audience to try to imagine what happens is a lot more effective than visually showing it.
Yeah, it's like those great monster movies where they don't actually show you the entity ever, and your imagination is so much worse than anything they could possibly show on screen.
Yeah. So
the one thing I would say about the characters, I might be in the minority on this one. I didn't fully believe the couple getting together at the end. That to me felt was just like, yeah, okay, I guess. But like I understand like the guy had the stereotypical crush on the older sister, but for the girl at the end, I was like, I felt like this is just a little bit of like trying to put a bow on things and stuff.
Yeah, but you can see in the way that they hold hands that she's apprehensive. Like it's almost like she's been pushed into this, because if he dies or if the other the hooker dies and it comes back to him, she's still reliant on him. It's almost this weird relationship she's now been forced into, and what she's forced him into, and something that they're going to be stuck with forever.
Yeah, because then at that point, is it one of those things? Like, people have talked about this for a while of like, do you just get in a relationship and constantly pass it back and forth to each other and then run together? Or what do you do? And it got to even the point where the director was like, no, like, even if you get on a plane or a boat and go somewhere else, it will eventually get on a plane or any other way to go and find you. So it's like, it's interesting.
Yeah, it is. It's a little bit disturbing when you put the long term on it. That you're always for the rest. And the Hugh character who passes it to her is always looking behind his back because he wants to see if the entity's following him or if it's going to be following someone else. So, like the first time, he has her trapped and he's looking to make sure it's actually going after her and not him. He's gonna be like that for the rest of his life. He's fucked up. He's all, we saw his hidden lair where he's learned all the tricks of the trade and all that type of shit. But he is fucked up the rest of his life. He's stuck here.
Yeah.
And hopefully, the main character at the end of the movie doesn't realize that she is in the same boat that Hugh was.
Well, and then going back to Hugh, I forgot until just now, but like, we don't see the entity with Hugh at the beginning. Like, he's like, do you see that girl in the yellow dress? It's really weird, isn't it? And she's like, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
But then when they go to the diner, there is a shadow figure that walks closer and closer to them outside that you're like, okay, something's about to happen. And like, those who've watched it are like, okay, it's going to happen. It's coming towards both of them. And then eventually, as soon as Jay can see them, we as the audience can see them.
Yep.
So it's really interesting how they hide or don't hide it based on that alone too.
Like I said, and I would hate to be the filmmaker to have to keep all this shit straight while making the movie. Who can see what and when? And let's film it both ways or all three ways, because I may change my mind when I'm editing. And I just would love to have been on the set trying to talk to the director and figure out exactly how he kept all this in line as he was shooting it, because that had to be complicated.
Yeah, and here's a question for you, Kevin, since you read the book about it. Do they mention anything about all the hand shots in the movie?
I don't remember they're mentioning anything about the hand shots.
Because there is an abnormal amount of hand shots where she's just constantly looking at her hands, and like something about her bright red nail polish.
Yeah, I've noticed that too.
Her single tattoo, and I'm like, I can't. That's the one thing I can't piece together is what they're looking at with her hands the entire movie.
No, because the book usually goes by, or the books, because the series usually tries to come up with as close to a relative analysis of things like that. But that probably just is a visual, kind of like the water as a visual motif. Not sure what exactly it meant for the filmmaker to put all these shots in regards to the water in the movie. Other than making it, I mean, they go to a lake house to try and be safe at the lake house.
Yeah.
She swims constantly throughout the film. The first woman goes to the beach to try and get killed. They try to kill the entity in an indoor pool. I mean, all these things are constantly throughout the whole film, which I didn't realize. And I only got a surface idea of that from the book. It wasn't until I rewatched it after reading the book that I actually saw how often it's in the movie visually. The hand thing I noticed was visually in the movie too, but I don't know. I don't recall if the book ever mentions anything like that. They very well could. Unfortunately, the Devil's Advocate books are really short. They're usually about 100 to 150 pages at the most. So they try and condense the actual critique and analysis that they can follow through with in the book as much as possible. They don't go and add a whole bunch of filler. Not mostly. I think only one of them I read had mostly filler. And I'll say it again, it's the one on Evil Dead. That movie did not need a critical analysis.
No.
There's no critical analysis to Evil Dead. Don't try and do it. They tried to do it, and it was mostly just filler. Most of the time, they have a reasonable expectation of a critical analysis for the films, like they did this one. It's really good, but they don't mention anything about the hands. I noticed it too, but it didn't dawn on me until just now when you mentioned it that there is an awful lot of shots.
Yes,
her hands.
Because the water I know was a big part on a couple of the things I read on the internet. They go through a lot of like it's her loss of innocence with the backyard pool because eventually it's like destroyed and drained, and her innocence is gone. or it's her safety net. She loves water, which is why they go back to the pool. But then there was also like some people were bringing up it's like the water of the womb, stuff like that. Like it reaches so far.
That's the thing, it reaches, I'll just talk to the director one day and say, yeah, David, what was your original concept with all this? I know visually stunning, water everywhere, but I need to know. Tell me, I need to know.
Why water? Why hands? What are we getting at?
Well, he could just be like Quentin Tarantino in feet shots. He
just loves hands.
I mean, there's no other. You laugh, Ray, but if you didn't know, Quentin Tarantino has a foot fetish. There's no reason in his movies that have so many fucking feet, other than the fact that he just loves taking video of fucking feet, and their feet are naked feet, shoes. They are people licking.
Yeah,
feet,
I mean it's not even. It's not even just his movies. I mean, look at From Dusk Till Dawn, where he was like, no, I want her feet in my mouth. You need to make this happen.
That's the funny one, but there are a lot of people out there who have these type of fetishes, and you put them in your movies, and you don't think people notice this shit, but after 10 movies and you have a 10,000 feet shot, people keep thinking, I think he has a problem with some feet there. I don't know if he has the director has anything by hands. I've only seen this movie. You got a chance to see his other movie. I'll have to go look for it now, to see if there's something similar, or I'll just have to do more research. I'm sure that when I rewatch it again, and I am telling everyone now, I will rewatch this again because now this is on my list of one of my favorite horror films, so I can rewatch this one and enjoy it now. When I rewatch it again, I'm bound to find out more things about it, and I'm sure someone else is going to write another critical analysis of the film. There's plenty of people out there who do critical analysis on these films. Devil's Advocate is not the other one. BFI does tons of them as well, and there's other ones out there. But
yeah, with it coming up on a decade right now, and especially with the sequel coming out, there's been a lot more on some of the horror communities of people writing.
Really,
a lot more breakdown. Decade? Yeah, it was 2014.
Oh my God.
Yeah. It's weird to think about.
It does not feel like that movie came out a decade ago.
No.
I'm thinking 5-6 years at the most. A fucking decade. Wow. Okay.
Now, one visualization that I'm curious what you guys can interpret with it. The scene when she's organizing the little grass strands on her knee.
Yeah, that was another thing everybody talks about, but nobody's really talking about. Everyone's talking about it, but nobody can answer the water, the hands, and the constant tally marks.
Oh. Interesting. I'll have to rewatch. When I rewatch it, I'll have to think about that because I don't know if I actually took that to mind as the tally marks.
Yeah, it was another thing that like kind of went with the hands. Is like she did it with the blades of grass. She did it with what was it? I'm actually looking at one of them right now. But yeah, like, I mean, even like she's got like the X on her hand. So it's like 10. It's almost like it's counting down. But it kind of jumps all over the place. So it doesn't really make sense.
Yeah, I noticed the X on her hand too. And I was like, I don't know what that's signifying.
Who knows? That's just one of those things that begs another conversation in horror. I tell you. Well, and with that, I would like to ask each of you if you have any final thoughts for the audience in regards to the movie It Follows. How about you, Panozzo? You have anything final to tell everybody?
Yeah, like you've especially been saying, Kevin, like you watch it the first time and you're like, okay, whatever. This is a really slow burn. Definitely go back and watch it a second time. It is definitely worth rewatching because you catch so much and you find additional meanings in each of the scenes, which ultimately helps the movie.
How about you, Ray?
Yep, piggybacking, like when I watched it the first time, it was a bit slow burn at the beginning, but it picks up very quickly. And yeah, I mean, you guys have pointed out a lot of things that I didn't pick up that now I want to rewatch again and keep my eyes out for. And as we covered with some of the stuff, there's still stuff that none of us have picked up yet, that there is probably some meaning that we can probably figure out and stuff. It's definitely a movie that rewards multiple viewings, and those are always great movies to have. So hopefully the sequel can continue that, but definitely this A lot of people compared it to like this is one of the new horror classics. I do think it is one of the new horror classics.
Agreed.
You could put in there.
Well, I will say this about this. Mostly, I am going to piggyback on the fact that we should all watch more A24 films. Because, this movie is an amazing film, and so is most everything A24 does. Even their lesser films are better than most everyone else's films.
Oh yes.
Which is amazing to say that they are really willing and ready to go out on a limb to help filmmakers and storytellers tell stories that are not conventional. It Follows is not a conventional story. It's not conventionally told, but it is amazingly told. And it rewards the viewer not only in the first viewing, but multiple viewings, which means it's easily rewatchable. And we want our horror films to sustain themselves and sustain through time by being rewardable to the audience member. So I would like to say It Follows is a great movie. Everyone out there, if you haven't seen it, by all means, take a chance on it. It is a slow burn, but it is rewarding. And by all means, check out some of the director's other films, because I'm hoping that they're just as interesting and engaging as this one is. I want to thank my guests for joining us on Conversations in Horror this week. Please, everyone, go out there and check out some of the previous episodes that we've done before. Check out some of the stuff that we have coming up. We have a lot to talk about here on the show, and I want to thank you all for joining us, and have a good day. Thank you. Conversations in Horror is a Broken Lighthouse Pictures production, produced by Kevin L. Powers, executive produced by Kelly A. Inoka, and originally filmed via Zoom technology. Conversations in Horror is hosted by Kevin L. Powers and co-hosted by various horror film lovers and filmmakers. To learn more about Mr. Powers, please make sure to check out his Patreon page and other social media platforms. Conversations in Horror is copyright 2024 Broken Lighthouse Pictures production.